All right, people, I'm so excited for you here today to meet Marisa Corcoran. Marisa is her name, not Marissa. I want to get that really right. Make sure you all get it right. So then the day you meet her, you can get it right. She is a light in this world, and she is just as obsessed with words as I am. And Marisa, I just want to welcome you to the show.
Oh, Brian, I'm so excited to be here. Also, because you're my friend. It's like cool to talk to somebody I know. And I think you're a light in this world. And I think you also have the best teeth in this world.
I'll take it. Thank you. I mean, looking at yours, as soon as you said, I'm like staring at yours, like, how can you say that when I'm looking at yours? And I feel like
No, I think yours
that's
beat
just,
mine. Just have a teeth war.
we go admiration fest. Okay, so Marisa, let's get right out of the way. You know, I talked about what you do, but can you tell anyone who's listening exactly what it is you do so they understand even better?
Yeah. So I'm a copy mentor and I help coaches and creatives uncover what to say and how they can say it to magnetically attract their dream clients with personality filled copy that dazzles and help you feel like a more confident and courageous writer, whether it's on your website, it's the emails that you send out, it's social media, it's going live. That's also copy too, like really helping you feel that you have that creativity and that chutzpah when it comes to how you talk about what you do and how you write about it.
Beautiful. And you should just know, and we know each other. So you know, I am obsessed with words and messaging and the clarity that it gives people, the people who meet you. And also I find that, and I'm sure you find this too, is like when we find the words to articulate what it is we do and who we want to attract, we suddenly feel like, oh, I understand myself better. There's like this total other thing that happens that isn't what you thought you were doing. I'm just writing copy for my website, but there's like, oh, I know who I am more. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Oh, 100%. The process is so deep. So even if I'm writing kind of the sales page for the Copy Confidence Society, we want to keep it like you're going to uncover your message. You're going to understand how to talk about what you do with clarity. You're going to write your website with kind of that ease and confidence. So there's those kind of external results that we've just seen from people who've gone through the program, but the internal ones are the really like crazy things that aren't always like the sexiest sell on the sales page. And I want to be like, listen, this process is deep. And inevitably people come out on the other side and they're like, I feel like I know my purpose. Or they'll learn something about, we have this first part of the program, Brian, which because we've talked about it before, we call it the copy star. And it's like, you can be these different things. You can be the nerdtastic leader. You can be the hooker with a heart of gold. You can be these different things. And it's really to help you kind of put more personality into your copy. But it's weird because people will walk away and be like, I feel like it gives me more confidence to be myself, even outside of my business. It's so wild, the process of what copy can uncover for you. And I love to hear those things. And I'm kind of just like, yeah, sometimes those are even, because if you follow the steps for the copy, you can come out with a website you feel really excited about. You can come out understanding how to talk about yourself with clarity. But those inner things is really what's going to kind of propel you forward. And I love when people have that.
Yeah. I love the way you say that. And, for a lot of this, my audience is actors and creative people who are filmmakers or content creators. And no one, unless you're a writer, you didn't sign up to be good at writing words. I think for a lot of these people don't think of themselves that way. And so like this morning, I was working on this actor's email. She's sending out to a casting director she met a while ago, and she suddenly has representation. She just wants to let this person know. And it was so clear in the email that like, she is super excited, but there were so many exclamation points and the word excited. And I was like, do you have to have such a boner for this casting director? Like, it isn't exactly the right, like, this is too excited. And you sound also like you're a 12-year-old with this number of exclamation points. I go, what do you really want to, what are you really excited about? What's the actual feeling behind it? And she, as I found her describe the words of why she was excited, it was almost like she settled into herself and was like, oh, that's really why I want to tell her this. It's almost like this weird coming to honesty with ourselves. I don't know if that's what you see people.
Oh, totally. And being able to be what you're saying, Brian, which I love that you uncovered with this person sending the email, which is also kind of how I got in grad school for acting. Just as a side note, one of my biggest, like first kind of conversion copy things that I did was writing the thank you notes that our class had after our showcase to agents that they saw. And I realized I was really good at it. So I was helping them write it. And you just reminded me of that all these years later, that's what I really started doing was people would just be like, well, what do I say? Like, thanks for the meeting. I'm like, well, what else did you talk about? Like as a human, what did you guys connect on, and finding that. So when you said that, it just brought that memory back. But I think going back to what you said is that specificity, like when we're writing copy, sometimes I call it like adjective stuffing. Like people will be like, if you're writing about what they're struggling with, you'll be like, you feel overwhelmed, you feel stressed, and we kind of just keep it like the surf. We just keep saying all these adjectives. And it's like, well, what does overwhelm look like for your specific person? Because overwhelmed for an actor is different than overwhelmed, who I deal with more in like the online business world.
Right.
So as opposed to a weight loss coach who's dealing with somebody who's trying to get off the dieting roller coaster and lose weight for the last time, like overwhelm means something different. So how can we crack into that specificity so that when people read our copy, they're like, oh, I feel like you're speaking right to me. And also, like you said, for this person, it gives us clarity and we actually know what we're doing this all for and what it all means.
Right. And I want to, I've already talked about the fact that you were an actor and that you went to Harvard for you got your MFA in acting. How do you find that background helps you in writing and in delivering this kind of training to people?
At all the things. And I had no idea. So when I started as a writer, it was really my side gig. I didn't want to go back to waitressing. I didn't want to nanny anyone else's kids. My bag would literally have like a thing of baby wipes, those like good for you lollipops from Whole Foods with like the, the sugar that, all these like Upper West Side kids had. And I just was like, I don't, so when I came back from grad school, I also had an agent now, and I needed to really like be available and make my own schedule. So one of my really, really good friends suggested that I would be good at this writing thing. And I didn't know, like this is 2013. So the online world was still kind of the wild, wild west. I didn't know what I was doing, but it was nice that I remember I was this mom in a Stop and Shop commercial. And while I was waiting, my one line, by the way, which was, it was for Thanksgiving. And I had to hold this turkey over and over again and say, what did I say? I said, this year, I want the best bird for my family and my wallet. And that was my one line that I said like a million times at like 2 a.m. in this grocery store in New Jersey. And while I was waiting, I was working on copy for a client. Just the idea that I could develop this skill while I was doing that was really appealing to me, but I used to keep them separate. So my maiden name is Frado, is my Italian. I'm very Italian, all Italian according to my ancestry.com. I'm 100% Italian. I just got my stuff back. So it's definitely Marisa and not Marissa. Yeah, I'm 94% Southern Italian and 6% Northern Italian. So I know I was hoping for something, but a little bit just a surprise. And no, it's not a surprise. And what I realized from doing this is like I kept them separate. So I was using my maiden name to be an actor. I was dating my now husband at the time, and I asked him, could I use your last name for people that book me as a writer? So if they looked me up as Marisa Corcoran, they wouldn't know that I was an actor. They would take me quote unquote seriously. So I kept them separate for a long, long time. And now it's so funny that I'm Marisa Corcoran, but my legal name is still Marisa Frado. But I built this company. It's a good thing my husband married. It was a good thing, right? And it worked out. But the crazy part is that everything that made me great at acting is all of the things that makes you compelling in as you write. And so I just started as I started teaching it to other people, I realized the way that I could teach it was to actually not keep them separate and bring all the acting stuff into it. So if we're doing like emails, for example, what do you want to get out of your scene partner, which is the reader, the person who's going to read this email? How do you want them to feel on the other side of the screen? So what's your intention?
I say this all the time. Wait, Marisa, I say this all the time, which is why I feel like actors, you're going to be the best email writers in the world because you are so focused on what do you want to get out. You know what an objective is. You know how to it's like you're going to be so good as soon as we translate that way of thinking. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but it made me feel good as a writer. It's like, oh, good, I'm saying the right things because I really look up to you as someone who really knows how to do this, and so that's a point for Brian.
100%. And creators and actors are just like primed to do this. So, and then also, how do you bring, you remember you go into all those acting classes and they would type you like what your type was, what you would be called in for, and actually understanding kind of your type as your copy. This is what the copy star is from. Are you the hooker with a heart of gold? Are you a nerdtastic leader? Are you the quirky misfit? And if you can lean into who you are and have all your stuff kind of feel like that, people start to really like love that personality. So being able to lean into our personalities in that way is really makes the copy. And also actors and creatives are these natural storytellers. So teaching that kind of art of storytelling to people within their copy. So I find I'm always going back to acting and like, I'm like, okay, well, this Harvard MFA really didn't pay off as an actor in the way that I wanted to, but it certainly has paid off here.
And I love what you just said. You kind of just outlined a system for those of us who are creatives. And I just want to kind of narrow in on that because it was really clear. It was like, you work on it, how you want the other person to feel, your scene partner, your reader to feel, right? Lean into your type, because that makes someone kind of fall in love with the voice that's coming at them and they understand more of who you are. And then the last one, you just said it. What was the last one you said?
Oh my God, I think so fast. My husband's like, you don't even remember anything that you just said. Cause he's like, I'm like, why didn't you remember it? He's like, is it my job to remember everything they said? Storytelling.
Storytelling, yes, great. Right. So there's three things. So, right, it's like your scene partner, your type, and storytelling. Those three things are what make a great email. So question for you, since you've worked with so many different creatives and different kind of jobs, that like someone could be a health coach, or they could be an online business coach as well, or whatever, all these different places, right? What do you find is like the number one thing that you are talking about with them? Is there like a number one mistake or number one solution that kind of breaks through almost everyone's mishigas and noise?
Yeah. It's not even a copy thing. It's that the best copy cannot fix a muddied message. So if your message isn't resonating, or it feels too general, or you're afraid to really speak to who you actually want to speak to, then the copy starts to feel a little generic. Even if you apply all these other things of the intention, of the specificity, of the storytelling, it doesn't grab people because it's not specific enough. So it's actually why inside of the Copy Confidence Society, the first thing we do is the copy star. Is you have to know who you are first. So we got to get your personality really leading the way. The second thing that you do is look at your messaging first. I mean, your messaging second. Before we even get into how do you write an email, or what's a great way to do storytelling or websites, is your messaging, because that's going to inform. And that's the number one thing that I see is people being afraid to be really specific in that messaging and worrying that if they get too specific, it's going to limit them. But what I've just seen from my experience of doing this since 2013 and then teaching people for, the last few years, is that it actually is what helps us be known and become that kind of specialist in a sea of generalists. Yeah. It's always my dream if I could just get people to be more specific in their messaging.
Well, I love what you're saying. Also, there's something you said at the very beginning of this that I think is so important, which is if we're afraid to talk to who we're talking to, or we're afraid to say, oh, I am talking to the head of this film festival, I am talking to a casting director, I am talking to an agent, we suddenly are like, I'm going to speak really generalized, like I'm speaking to all managers in the entire world, or all of America I'm talking to right now, because if I get specific, I might lose somebody, is kind of where I'm going with this. Yeah. And because the way that I always talk to people is we pray for unsubscribes. We really want to get rid of the losers. Like I want people who are not supposed to be following my emails, or I want to find the cast director who's not going to respond to you. Great. You can quit putting energy into that person, put the energy into the ones that are going to do it. And so so what I find what you're describing is kind of like it's an editing tool to get people out of your database, or to lose them from the people you're going to stay in touch with, because we want to walk towards the ones that are jiving with staying in touch with you. And also this can, I don't know if you find this, but sometimes I just have to talk people off the ledge around, like, some people just don't like to use their inbox that way. They're never going to want to hear from you with that email. They're never going to want to hear you reach out to them personally or in a newsletter or in any way, because they're just not the person who relates to their inbox in that way. So it has nothing to do with you. We got to find another way to be in touch with them. Do people ever have these big, like, I'm worried about losing unsubscribes, or oh gosh, people aren't going to like, do you have this conversation often? I could have made $1 million just off every time someone said that to me, and I charged them. And and I get it, right? Because we're looking and we're seeing, oh my, it's like in our bodies, like, oh my gosh, someone doesn't like me. And I'm so much like this. My mom used to say, me and my Uncle Mark are like twins in this way. My mom has 4 brothers, but one of her younger brothers, my Uncle Mark, we're very similar. It's like 99 people could be obsessed with us in a room, but the one person who isn't, it's all we can think about. So why doesn't this one person like me and my Uncle Mark? We're just we'll sit around for hours and analyze it. And I think that's the same way when we look at the unsubscribes, but you're so right, Brian. Unsubscribes actually, to me, now barring obviously when we're writing something or we're communicating, we're not saying anything that's blatantly
offensive. We're not saying anything that's like racist, homophobic, xenophobic. If not, like, you're probably not listening to this podcast, right?
Right, yeah.
So if you put that aside, sometimes then if unsubscribes to me are a sign that you've said something that has jolted a response. And our whole goal is to get people to say, like, you have to have that push and pull, people that yes, and you have to have that no. And so I actually don't look at my own back end of my own email. Any stats that I need, I ask my team to give me so that I'm never, because I'm not saying I'm above looking at it. Okay.
Right.
So I just don't look. It doesn't matter unless something would be like that we had to, but I also know we're not sending out anything that's like blatantly offensive.
Right.
So it's not anything I'm even worried about or tracking. And instead I'm focused on the people. And I wish I could have done this as an actor. I used to be like obsessed with like, oh, I don't think that casting director likes me and trying to like figure out how to like make them like me when I walked in or like look up from. Even so, I used to have this one casting director who called me in for commercials all the time. And it's like, I look back at who I am now and I'm like, I should have further fostered that relationship.
Instead of worrying about the people who aren't paying attention.
Yeah. Like, yeah, me now a few years out of, I know I haven't been an actor since like 2017. And I look back and I go, why didn't I foster more work begets work? Like, why didn't I just worry about this person who we used to bond over how much we both loved Bravo and watching Real Housewives? He thought I looked like Katie from Vanderpump Rules. This is how our relationship started.
I mean, I can kind of see it.
I know it's fine. It's fine. But it started this conversation between us. So every time I'd go in, I'd be in there for like an extra 5 minutes because we'd be talking about Bravo and I always got a call back. And it was just an awesome relationship. And I think I was so worried about bullshit.
Yeah.
So again, I'm like, I wish I could go back now in that way. Yeah.
And I want to make sure everyone's really clear because in case you have not been tracking with the kind of stuff that I talk about, is I do believe any kind of creative person does need to be creating some kind of database of the people that they've met in their careers and that they're staying in touch with them in one form or another. If that brought up all kinds of resistance, good. You are a creative person and you are a human being and it's supposed to. This is the stretch we're being asked to make. And that's why we're having this conversation today. But I just want to say that that's one of the things that I firmly believe. So this conversation on unsubscribes is around when people drop off of your database. But I even think about unsubscribes as being the person who doesn't respond to that personalized email that you send out and they just, you feel ghosted or you feel silent from them. I'm like, great, they are not the person and that is okay. And I get to move on and focus on the next one. So for me, unsubscribed is more than just a database, but I just want to make sure everyone is tracking kind of this piece of the conversation. And
I really like that, Brian, because sometimes personally, if I'm sending something specifically to somebody, it's important to remember. Like the database, I'm like, I'm over that. I'm like, I don't even look at it. But personally, if I reach out for an ask, it's important to remember that, like, okay, I tried, I did my follow-ups, I did all the steps I should take. And then that's it. And you know, what's so weird is like a solid, like 7 out of 10 times, I will reconnect with that person in some way, like a year or something later, and they will share something that was happening. It's like 90% of the time, it's not even about us.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm like, oh, and I'm thinking in my head, I sent you an email you never responded to. And now I know why.
And also, there's also this gift of, like you said, you did say this, so I did my follow-ups. Like I did my follow-ups along the way, like meaning like I didn't send one email and be like, okay, they hate me and I'm never responding. Like you have to like confront, like, actually I sent one email, I can send one more reminder email before I bail on that. Or like there's room for you to be a reminder who is not an annoying person. So often I hear like, I just don't want to be annoying is like the number. And I like, great. So we know that you are annoyed about your own inbox sometimes. That's what that reveals to me, is that you get annoyed to people in your inbox. Okay, that's about you, not so much about them. Yeah. But what you just said also around the casting director, you said, I should have just ran towards this casting director who loved me instead of trying to chase these other ones. Is there's also this sneaky scarcity thing that I think shows up, which is there's no way that the ones who love me are enough.
I know. That's my whole life as an actor.
There's no way that the ones who like me are going to have enough opportunity or enough. We're never going to, like, I have to find more, because then I don't know what, but because then I just have to find more. The ones that already like me. And Jenna Fisher, I think, says in her book From the Office, she says, like, you need 7 people to love you. You need 7 casting directors to love you. You need 7 people to love you and your career will take off. And I always come back to that idea that just keep work towards those people. So that just really, that resonates for me. Okay, so I want to come back a little bit to copy stuff that I'm talking about with you. So one of the things that I wrote down is the question, like, make sure you ask Marisa this when you talk to her kind of question, cool. Right? Is a lot of creatives, like I said, they don't have the basics, right? So I wrote, let's get down to the absolute basics for someone just starting their business. What is copywriting and why is it so important? I feel like we've touched on some of this, but if we were to really talk about a basic, when I say the word basic, is there anything that comes to mind for you that you're like, do this, get this started?
I think it's that mix of what we were saying before, which is understanding your own voice and vibe, which really comes from writing and from letting yourself be like learning the process of it, that you don't need to be good at it right away. Like you said this in the beginning, Brian, people feel like, oh, I'm not good with words, or I'm not a good writer. And it's really has nothing to do with that. It's more uncovering our own voice. And we really need to give yourself the space to do that. So for me, I always tell people to find like a content lab, like a place where they can get started to practice this kind of voice and vibe.
What do you mean? What is content lab? Tell me what that means when you say that.
So content lab is like, where is there a place where you would feel comfortable kind of experimenting to see what kind of things you're saying are resonating with your ideal people? For a lot of people, that might actually be like your personal Facebook page, like a place to do, that's where your most of like, quote unquote, like followers or people are, to start to kind of experiment. For other people, maybe it's Instagram. Or other people, maybe you have a smaller kind of email community and that can be your content lab. But I think we're always trying to like conquer all these places. Oh, I got to be on Facebook. I got to be here. I got to be there. And I kind of always tell my people in the society, pick one of those places and really make a commitment to kind of show up and practice that kind of voice and vibe. And I think that is one of the great ways to start uncovering what's resonating with people and what felt easy for you to create, what felt harder, and just kind of giving yourself that process to see. And then from like a core copy standpoint, like if there's a piece of copy to start and look at, I think a lot of people would differ on this. And I think a lot of people probably disagree with me on this, but I actually do believe that the process of creating your website is really powerful. I think people get really caught up in it and then they want to perfect it within an inch of its life, which is why in the society, we actually teach you a one-page website so we can get this baby done and dusted and actually out into the world. We're not spending years on this thing, but it really helps to solidify it kind of solves all those things. What's the personality I want to lead with? Is my message clear here? And what is the best way I want to bring people in? It's like the perfect way to do that. And but it's one of the reasons we have it just be a one-page website, because people can get so caught up and spend forever on their website thinking that's like their moneymaker or that's how they're going to bring in people. And that's a whole other conversation. It's not, but it really gives you that boost and it gives you instant copy that you can repurpose everywhere.
I love what Marisa, it's so funny because when I always say to actors, and my audience is not just actors, but to actors specifically, do not focus on your website. It is not the most important thing. No one is going to go Google you and find you to give you an audition. However, I also believe this is the paradox, is I believe what you just said is 100% true, because nothing else makes you go, I'm going to start from zero and get everything, all my ducks in a row and understand the messaging that I'm putting out and get that. Like we might think of like our Actors Access profile or the online is kind of doing that, but you don't have as much control in those areas, which is why a website is so much more powerful. I'm thinking specifically of an actress that I know who's also a filmmaker, and actually she's more of a filmmaker than an actress. And when she did her website, I saw her entire career change. And it was because she had such a clear, like, I am still showing up as an actress, but I'm putting my filmmaking front and center. And it is literally, it's a 2-page. The second page is a contact me, but all of it's on one page, which is exactly right. And what I love about this is because it makes you zero in on, this is not going to be the War and Peace website over here.
No.
You're not going to use a lot of words. So you're going to have to really distill into what the messaging wants to be. I think that's so powerful.
Yeah. And I think that's the battle for people, but it's why we really, I actually teach this one-page website according to kind of, and a lot of you will know, like in romantic comedies, we call it the meet cute, like when the two romantic leads are going to meet. And I basically teach the one-page website with this kind of meet cute method about how do we basically put this together to like have this hope that these two characters are going to meet for this next time, like get us to the end of their date, the second date.
I love
And
that.
so,
I love
yeah,
that.
it's really fun. We call it
Yeah.
the hope. It's like the meet cute hope method and the HOPE. They all stand for something. And so if I can have people just really get clear on what those are, then they have something that's like, again, that internal kind of confidence boost for them. So much of that copy you can take and repurpose. And what you said, Brian, which I totally agree with, is that your website is always your own. It's your own thing. So no matter what, even as actors or like certain ways change or certain platforms, this is always like this tried and true thing that you can send people to or include in kind of your presence.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where I do start to believe in it. As I say, like, I always say, like, listen, if we need to work on your branding, your website could be a great place to be, but you better have your other stuff in line first, because that other stuff is where your agent is sending you out, where you're sending your, like, that stuff's got to be out there. So I say, like, it's kind of in tandem that you could do those two things. But what I love about it is because at the end of creating a website, there's something that you get to be like, and there it is. There's a performative, like, an audience can come now, and there's something that feels really good about that piece of it. You can celebrate it. And I think sometimes when we're sending emails out into the world, it doesn't feel that kind of celebration, because like you might get a reply from this person or that person or whatever. It doesn't feel that same kind of like it is in the world and people can see it.
Yeah.
And that's exciting. I think that's cool. So I wanted to go, so one thing that you said that I think I can hear myself and some other creative people thinking about is the authenticity around, like, identify that voice and lean into that voice and into that type. And someone be like, well, that doesn't feel authentic to me. I'm sure you might have conversations that you've had about this, or like, well, that doesn't, how do I make it really me? Is there any kind of guidance you can give us around that conversation someone might be having with themselves?
Yeah, it's not going like so one of my favorite like writing mentors, Laura Belgray, always says like the more you write, the more you write. So like, which is always makes me laugh, but it's so true. And it's just kind of like it might not feel authentic at first. The way that a lot of things don't feel when it's newer to you. And so it's allowing yourself to wade through the discomfort and be okay with that, which can be really like I find myself I have to constantly say that. And also, there is always something that's going to feel a little performative when we are kind of showing up. It's kind of like, for actors, like our headshot is like us on our best day, or it's supposed to look like us on our best day. And I think now you don't always show up that way in your writing. I've definitely showed up myself, me on my worst day. I'm like as transparent as I can be, but there's still an element of like, okay, I'm Marisa. Like I have a little bit of my Sasha, Beyonce talks about like putting like that Sasha Fierce jacket on before she goes out on stage. And I think that you have to, it should feel a little bit of that performance aspect. And I actually really thrive off remembering that. Like if I'm in launch mode and I have to do my webinars and stuff, I'm in performance mode. Mm-hmm. And I know that. That doesn't mean that it's any like not authentic to who I am and the core promise of what I know people are going to get if they come inside. But that's me on my best day. Mm-hmm. That's like, so I actually like the performance aspect of it. It's like what you see in so many art forms and stand-up comedy and in so many things. It's like allowing it to feel weird at first and wade through the discomfort. And also I think there is an element of performance to it.
Yeah. I mean, the image, I just got an image as you said this, is like, it's like if you were at a dinner party and then all of a sudden all eyes were on you. Well, tell that story. Well, all eyes are on you. You're going to tell that story. You're not going to like, I'm looking at inbox, the email is, your name is at the top of it. I'm expecting a message from you. So my eyes are on you. So you wouldn't, sleep through the way you told that story. Like that would not, we wouldn't stay engaged. So I get that. And then I also like that you said that you're kind of growing into what becomes, I will say that when I'm writing copy, I always feel like, oh shit, this is going to be outside my comfort zone because I'm trying to push myself from the last time I wrote an email. Each time it's a little bit like, it's a little different kind of discomfort, or I'm discomforted, right? Do you ever have that like click send anxiety, or you like way past that now in your life?
No. I do sometimes. It depends on what I'm talking about now, because I've really made it a goal of mine to be, it's just, and not everybody is like this. So one of the things we talk about in the society is we come up with like these different motifs and like themes that you can keep coming back to. But also part of that are what are things that are on your list that like you don't want to talk about? Like certain actors, like there's things they're not going to discuss in an interview. Okay. So we always bring up, it's so funny how much acting comes up in this. So I say like, what are the things that, you're not going to talk about? So there's people like, I think it's important to know what you want to share and parts of you that you don't want to share. I kind of tend to fall, I'm a Leo, number one. And, like I'm kind of an open book in that way. And so I am pretty like transparent and honest. And I will pretty much talk about like everything. And there are still some times when I'm like, okay, well, how much more am I going to kind of share? And there have been certain emails, especially this year, that I've clicked send and I'm like, oh boy, let's see what happens. But I think that usually those ones are really powerful, or especially as I've really made a commitment over the last year on like my own like social justice work to say things that I know are going to polarize the room, but I'm like, it needs to be said. So I always kind of go back to my own skin in the game. Like, what am I doing this for? Like, what is my scene partner? What is my reader? What am I trying to get from them to understand or change or in this moment? And is this the way to go about it? And if it is, I go, okay, then it serves the bigger purpose.
This is what has to be said. And what I love that you're saying also isn't like, you're not like being salacious to be salacious, just like throwing things out there to like say incendiary things so people get stirred up. You're actually saying it because this is what needs to be said. Or like one of the things I kind of tapped into, you're saying is like, I've got my objective with my reader. And then me, Marisa, the business has like this, super objective around like what we're doing in the world and how much do I get to let my reader in on that as I'm going forward this, right? And I think I always talk to creatives about this is like, yes, we know the most boring thing you can tell me is you love to make movies, you love to make art, you love to act. Duh, we all like, it's such a given or you wouldn't be doing this. Like we like to quit saying, I'd love to do this. No one cares. So sorry, quit saying I'd love to do this and I'd love to do that. Like, sorry, right? I wish it mattered. So the trick of that is it is not vulnerable to say that then. So I always have to push it a little further. So rather than I'd love to do this, I believe in doing this because, or I have a vision of, or I want to see this kind of art in the world. That makes just such a difference. And the person on the receiving end, it's so much more interesting than them to see who you're trying to become as an artist than like, I'd love to be in your film. Like, I don't think anyone listening to this podcast would say that, but I'm just trying to like dumb it down for a second here so we can be really clear. So, okay, this is going to be for Brian. Can you just tell me like, what are like 3 or 5 or 2,500 things that you do when you're the email? Like these are like either pet peeves or always is that you stick with whenever you're writing copy. Like one of mine is like trying to get rid of INGs. Fine. Like one of mine is trying to, I have done or I did is so much better than I have done. Like those
the passive voice.
Yes, right. Are there any other things that you're always like, I always see this and I love to find it or like a couple ones you can share with us?
I like to start each paragraph or each sentence with a different letter. So if you go through and you see I, or this one time, this other time, our eyes just like we start to glaze over it. So I really make it a point to make sure each of my sentences is a different letter because I just feel like it's going to stop the eye.
You're saying like, when you're saying sentences, you're specifically meaning paragraphs, correct?
Yeah. I try to write that's another one. I try to write like if we're talking about an email, I try to write pretty short, crisp paragraphs, which is different from everything that we were like taught in school, in English class. So we really have to throw that out. Like if I'm opening an email and it's like these giant paragraphs, like I need a nap. I cannot, I need a minute. So we want to actually have shorter, crisper paragraphs. I'm not one of those people that needs to have like one sentence, I'm not into that either, but I think there's a nice balance that we can have. And so each paragraph, I try to start with a new letter. I feel like that really stops the eye. Another thing that I like to do is, can I break any moment up in an email with bullet points instead of paragraph? So if I'm listing it, and a lot of this has actually come from, I've pitched so many people for the Copychat. I've had we're coming up as we're recording that on the 6th season. I've had over 100 people on the Copychat and I've probably pitched 200 to get that 100.
Marisa, just so that my listeners know what the Copychat is, because it's such a cool event. It felt like an event from the outside.
Yeah.
I'm going to an event. So can you tell everyone what that is so that they can look forward to next year and they can know what it is?
Yeah. So it's a summit. We do it twice a year, but it's like the coolest summit in the world.
Yeah.
So we usually have about 10 to 12 experts. And we're talking about how to craft copy that attracts clients, makes money, and creates a massive movement online. And it's totally free to listen in. And we also raise money for charity as part of it as well. So to date, the Copychat has raised a little over $50,000 for charity, which is pretty incredible. And each interview is really to help you crack into a different piece of copy and be able to walk away and make a little micro change, whether it's about sales page mistakes or the anatomy of an email, or we'll talk about home pages one season. And sometimes we have these little outside the copy box interviews too, which are a little bit more of like copy and business together. So each season kind of has its own flavor.
Can you give us a sneak peek? What's the next season? Do you know what it's going to be?
Yeah. So this, when we're recording this, it's July, but it's coming up in August. Yeah. And we start off this season with the art of voice of customer research. Like, how much research do you have to do? How do you grab the right language of your ideal clients? We're also talking about sales page mistakes and how to fix them. It's a really, really great one. We also have a whole day devoted to social media we do every season. And this one is probably my favorite one. So my pal Gwen Lane is talking about how to put together like an imperfect reel. And it was actually the first time I was ever like, I'll do a reel because of Gwen. It's a really, really good. We're talking about on another one of our days, one of our outside the copy box is how do you actually create community in your programs? Like, where all the focus is always on marketing. Right. But what about the copy that needs to happen once people are on the inside to create community and feel that you've delivered on the results that you've promised? Yeah. We also have my pal Mike Ganino is on this season talking about like oral storytelling. Like, how do you really captivate people in like a TED Talk, a webinar? But it's not just like, oh, this is what you need to say. We really get into actually great. Any actors would love it because all his stuff comes from acting too. And it's like, how do you use the voice, like full frontal storytelling, all this stuff.
Great. I love it. And what I love about what you're saying, and I want to make sure listeners get that when we're talking about sales pages and we're talking about the anatomy of email, and like finding your ideal customer in their language, this all applies to. This just isn't the language that we use when we're a filmmaker or a writer or an actor. What that means is when you're talking to a producer, what language should you use? When you're putting out a one sheet, what should that look like? What are the things that wants to include? When I put together a press kit. So everything that you're saying applies. I remember listening to it I think it was last year, right? I guess maybe.
There was one earlier this year too.
Right.
Yep.
And like folding laundry, and I was like, I have to stop and open the computer and look at this and take a note, like, because they're all most of them are audio, right? Are they all audio?
They're all audio. Yep. Yeah, it's kind of a podcast style.
Yes, yep. Which is so fun because it's audio. Okay. So we were going back. So we got the first letters of a paragraph. We got, what was the other one that you said?
The bullet points. And the reason I say this is because I've pitched so many people for the Copychat. And when I first started the Copychat, nobody knew who the hell I was. I had 70 people on my email list. Most of was my mother, my best friend, Katie, and a few private clients that I had. Nobody knew who the hell I was. Mm-hmm. So this pitch email was so important. So structuring it with what was my ask and putting that actually into bullet points, what I needed from them. Making it really clear. So if there's anything that you're asking or any way that because a lot of times we scroll. And so I'm going to stop at the bullet point section. So if there's something extra you want to make sure people understand, or there's 3 tips or 3 points, or it doesn't have to be 3, but whatever it is, and sometimes I like to make sure that that's in a bullet point because people don't miss that.
Got it. Beautiful. One of the things that I also hear you saying, and this is kind of inherent in the way that I talk to creatives about reaching out, is, and this may sound diminishing, but it's not. I say, talk to me like I'm a 3rd grader in your email at some point. Tell me what to do and be really clear at some point, or I'm not going to be able to take action, because if I'm confused, it's going to be a no. Like, so I would say, and so I always talk about how we can sacrifice. I think I stole this from Dallas, one of my coaches, our coach, being clever over clear. Like, don't sacrifice clarity for cleverness. Like, we have to still understand what is happening in the conversation.
Always. And so when I was first pitching the Copychat, I would literally have a part where I was like, what is this? And I would explain, that tell me if you agree that when people start talking about themselves or writing copy, it can feel this way. So I want to bring together a group of people to do A, B, and C around copy.
Right. I love it. Love it. So clear.
So clear.
Okay, give me some more. Give me some more of your love tricks.
Well, you said it, having whatever the email, whatever you're writing, having a clear call to action. Mm-hmm. Or if there's something you want someone to do. So when I was pitching people for the Copychat, I wasn't leaving it up to them to go, please respond back at your earliest convenience. No, I was saying, like, I actually put my link in there for them to go ahead and schedule the call to like have the conversation, but to be very specific about what I wanted them to do. Mm-hmm. And so even if it's just you're wanting to get engagement, on a social post or whatever it is, really thinking of these like little micro things that people can do. So is it, asking a very specific question? What's the number one way you've, dealt with this? Pop it into the comments or give me, a favorite emoji, like making it easy for people to respond, I think is really important. And not just kind of leaving it up to, let me know what you think about this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say one of the places that I find, and maybe that'd be a great conversation for us to have, is creatives are often challenged by how do I ask? I don't know if there's a call to action because I know this person isn't going to go to coffee with me, but I want them to know that I exist. And I want them to know that like, I'd love to work with them one day. So I always don't know how to end my email, how to say like, and this is a place where I always have to wrestle with them a little bit. Is there anything that you have found that is I don't want to say, because it's different. It's like what you said, it's engagement, maybe less than call to action. Mm-hmm. Right? Is there anything that you have ever advised someone on in the past that you felt like really worked?
It's a good question. I feel like I always go back and ask myself, what's something that I would respond to? What's something that I would take time to hit reply to? And sometimes I like to look at what we've mentioned so this kind of actually goes with something else, which is always so when I was pitching people for the Copychat, I would start off talking about them and not about me and who I was. Nobody cared about me. It was like, what was in it for them? So I was very specific in why I reached out to them and down to quoting them. Like if I had heard them on a podcast, I would go back and find what I heard and I would like quote them in there. I wasn't just saying, I'm a huge fan of yours and I'd love to feature you on the Copychat.
Which FYI, everyone hear what you just said, because that's exactly what I don't want any of your emails ever to say. I'm a huge fan of yours and I'd love to come into an audition. Or I'm a huge fan of your show and I'd love to go. Or I'm a huge fan of this festival and I'd love to be. Thumbs down. It is just like anyone in the world can say that. It doesn't feel specific. Yeah. Okay, great. Good job.
And with social media, you can find things out about people. You can go. So I would always say, hey, Brian, I'm such a fan of yours. I'd love to feature you on the Copychat. Here's why. I've been listening to Brian Brake's character. I loved, if it was, pretend I'm not me. I loved your episode with Marisa Corcoran. I loved how you were talking about how, emails can't start off generic. They have to be specific. Like I would quote you and I'd say, this is why I know you'd be such a fantastic guest on the Copychat.
Got it.
Then I go into those bullet points. So sometimes if I've done my job of actually being specific with them, and I do this again. So I never miss an opportunity to have a PS in an email.
Either. I'm like,
love a PS.
PS. Like people will just read your PS sometimes. People, you got to use that. You got to use that PS. Yeah. So
sometimes when I pitching people for the Copychat in the PS, I will use that to specifically call out like a human to human thing. So I might say, and now my personality is a little kind of like sassy, funny. So I might be like, hey, Brian, this is, we don't know each other, but listen, I think you have the greatest teeth on earth. And if you're on the Copychat, it's going to be audio, but maybe we can take a picture so everyone can see. It might be something like that, right? Or I might go to your Instagram and see something that we have in common. And I might mention that. So I've said to people before, oh my gosh, whether or not you can be on the Copychat, I think your dog is so cute. And I might say something specific.
Yeah.
And so I find that if I do that, even if my ask, well, not in the Copychat, but in other times where my call to action may not be as clear, I'm not asking them to go to lunch or whatever, they naturally reply back to it and start the conversation because I've kind of given a shit and they've seen that this isn't like a generic thing. I took the time to find this out. And so even if people have said no to the Copychat in the past, they always respond back to me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love that. I also love good about it is I'm wondering for you, when you don't hear back from anyone when it comes to Copychat, and now that it's been around for a while and like some people know about it, if you never hear back from any, do you make anything of that?
I used to. Yeah, definitely. But now I'm like, I have my follow-up. So if I reached out to you, Brian, you didn't respond. So I know I have it clocked in the spreadsheet. And then I'd follow up in the given time frame and I'd be like, hey, Brian, popping back to the top of your inbox to check in on this. As I said, I know this audience would be obsessed with you. And I would just kind of, I'm putting the link in here, look forward. I would love to have you on the Copychat. I'm crossing my fingers. It's a yes.
Got it.
Then I'll send one more if I don't hear from you.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, as I haven't heard from you, Brian, I'll take it as the Copychat is not a good fit for you right now. And that, if that's the case, I'll be gone from your inbox, but still stalking your perfect teeth.
Right. And so I think I stole this from Dallas as well. This is dead to me email. Do you call that the dead to me email?
Oh my gosh, that's right. Doesn't Dallas do like a whole other subject line? Like it's like a whole different email, right?
Yeah. So it depends on the person. So I want everyone to be very careful around this, but this is a great process. If you're really trying to connect with someone that, and you're like what you've just done, email number one, email number two, trying to pop it to the top of your inbox. And I think that an email number three can be like, I'm going to make the assumption that this is not for you right now. Kind of like what you said, Marisa.
Yep.
If I got that wrong, certainly reply. Certainly you can reply, but no matter what, I want you to know there's a fan over here and I'm looking to stay in touch with it. And this is a small world and I'm looking forward to staying in touch in some way or another. And oftentimes that dead to me, like I'm not talking to you anymore either, is the one that gets a response.
Totally.
Because that person is like, oh, I've been meaning to respond. And oftentimes I actually feel like, and I don't know if you feel this way ever, Marisa, because our emails are so thoughtfully constructed, I often find that sometimes people feel like they need to respond as thoughtfully.
Oh yeah, I'm that way. So
Yeah.
people respond so much to my emails, like my community, and I still have emails right today. Like I always do them like kind of on a Friday, I like to get my inbox back to zero. It's just my thing.
Yeah.
One time it had like thousands and one day I was like, never again. And so now I've just gone to the other side. But I have a few that are sitting in my inbox because my readers have responded so thoughtfully back that I was like, gosh, I got to take some time and really respond back to this. So that other email can really be helpful for people to just get them to whatever that response is.
I totally want to do it. Just haven't had time to respond. Yes. Right.
Yes.
Marisa, this conversation has been so exciting and helpful for me to hear kind of these kind of things that have really helped the way that I think about copywriting. And I know that tons of people are going to want to be able to stay in touch with you. We will link to that in the show notes, but is there anything you can tell them now where they can find you online?
Yeah, I think the best place is to come on over to the Copychat. If you're on Facebook, to come on over to the Copychat Facebook group. So that's my content lab. This is where all my ideas like start and I experiment. See, do people even give a shit about this? Let's find out. And so that's inside the Copychat Facebook group. I go live in there every week. I answer questions about copy. It's a great way to learn more about the Copychat. I bring in guests in there a lot, and it's a really awesome community. So that's a great place. And also, I love Instagram. So I'm at Toni, Toni, like Toni Braxton, on Instagram, and you can DM me. I love when people DM me and I will respond back to you. Even if you write me something super thoughtfully, I'll take some time and then I'll respond back to you super thoughtfully.
So sweet and so jazz. And Marisa, I'm also going to link to, if it's okay with you, that incredible subject lines freebie that you have that people just love. Is that all right with you?
Oh my gosh, of course, because we were talking about the different things of through kind of the email lens. And I think what happens sometimes for people is they'll write like the best email and then no one reads it. And that's where it comes to subject line. If we don't hit people because our inboxes are so crowded. And so that's why I created the 50 plus scroll stopping subject lines. And there's 3 formulas in there. And you can kind of swipe any of them. And then I connect them back to certain emails. So you can see examples of how they connect. And start swiping them for yourself and using them. It's an
incredible resource and I recommend it to tons of people. So I just really appreciate that. And hopefully we'll all be tuning into the Copychat because I love what you've got lined up. So I just want to thank you so much for not just for coming on the podcast today, but just for your enthusiasm for language and creative people and creativity, because putting yourself out there can be hard, and finding the language that you can feel comfortable with using is a journey that isn't just about editing pieces of words on a screen or words on a piece of paper. It is about something. And I just so respect that you understand that and that you hold the space for that, as well as like, don't start every sentence with the letter T. Like that both of those things can be hand in hand when I talk to you. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
You have to come back.
So much fun.
Promise.
Oh my God, anytime.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.